Good day, I'm John Fernandez. Welcome to eNewsline Live from AACSB's world headquarters in Tampa, Florida. The higher education landscape has become more inclusive of new locations, players, and competitors. As a result, business schools are compelled to better differentiate themselves and effectively communicate their promise to students, employers, and others. The 2013 accreditation standards encourage AACSB schools to demonstrate innovation, impact, and engagement within their various activities. A school's branding and marketing strategy should also follow these three principles to maintain relevancy to the various stakeholders they serve. We are very pleased to have as our guest Joan T.A. Gabel, Robert J. Trulaske Sr., Dean of the Trulaske College of Business at the University of Missouri. Dean Gabel has been deeply committed to the rebranding process of Trulaske. Similar to the Mizzou nickname of the University of Missouri, the MIZBIZ brand of the business school is becoming well known among students, faculty, employers, and nationally. As many of you know, AACSB and its partner, Eduvantis, have been working closely the past year to identify strategies and initiatives AACSB and member schools can do to promote the value of AACSB accreditation and accredited school distinctiveness. Today's discussion will focus on rebranding within business schools and the MIZBIZ promise and help schools enhance the value of their accreditation. Joan, welcome to ENL.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
This is such an exciting topic, and it's one that I think everyone is interested in. It's not simply the faculty and your administrators, but your students, employers, their parents. They want to be associated with something cool. So we're, and meaningful.
Yes.
So we're really happy to have you here, and we know you're excited about this topic.
We are.
So we'll get right into the discussion. Branding, logos, and marketing have become major areas of interest to business schools in the past few years. Historically, higher education as an industry has not placed much weight on such areas. Has instead focused on the educational experience it provided to students. Why do you think emphasizing branding, strategic marketing, and communication have become so important for business schools and higher education in general?
Well, I'd like to start by saying it's not an either-or proposition. A business school and the university within which it sits, if that's the case, is always primarily focused on student programs, research, and expanding the knowledge base for business and scholarship of business. But telling the story of how we do that and making sure that all of our constituencies, the list that you described, but I would actually add to that, our colleagues across campus, the central administration at the university, the communities that we serve, the legislature and the government, need to understand what we're doing and the value proposition of what we provide. And a brand promise, a brand image, can help you do that quickly, cleanly, succinctly, and consistently, even though all of those audiences would hear your story or have an interest in your story in different ways. So it allows you to focus on the programs that you provide for your students and then have the value of what you're doing be clear to everyone that you serve.
It's crowded sound space, so you're very right. The clarity and the meaningfulness is certainly important. Well, how do you think higher education's and specifically management education's image changed in the past 10 years or so?
Well, I think that higher education and management education have had some upside changes, but there have been some challenges in how we're viewed by different constituencies in different ways. On the upside, I think there's a very clear understanding that there is an advancement opportunity personally and professionally available to those who continue their education, a bachelor's degree or undergraduate degree, graduate education, and for those interested in scholarship, of course, to continue into doctoral or professional studies. But there is also a challenge in our image in business schools and universities in general. Cost is obviously at the forefront of the conversation, and whether there's a return on that investment once made is at the forefront of the conversation for us and in business schools and for universities in general. And I think we in the business understand our value proposition. We know that when you come to continue your studies in higher education at any of the levels that I've just described, that you advance yourself personally and professionally, you build networks, you develop content, comprehensiveness, skills, competencies, you create professional opportunities you wouldn't otherwise have. There's safe space to engage in maturation so that you understand your goals and how to reach them. But to demonstrate that to all of the different constituencies that we service and who want us to remain accessible, who want us to remain an opportunity available to anyone with the qualifications to pursue it, those are very difficult things to balance, and it can be a very small needle to thread. So as we deal with this image challenge of the cost of education and whether or not that cost creates ROI, it's very important that we explain what the value we offer is. And for those who are willing to sit down and discuss, I think it's very easy to explain. But for those who want to understand it quickly, that's where a brand promise really can serve you very well.
Well, here, this is a little more on the brand promise, and we can get a little more specific and have a chat about what some other schools are doing, but let us look more closely at the Trulaske College of Business and the MIZBIZ brand. What is the MIZBIZ brand's promise? That's a cute one to say, and what factors caused the school to conduct a rebranding process in the first place? It seems like we're in two areas here, the promise, and then what drove the rebranding process?
I'm actually going to take those out of order if you don't mind.
Yes,
so the process was that just a little bit about the University of Missouri for those who don't know us and the family within which the Trulaske College of Business sits is that we are a very large public land-grant university, which means that our mission is to serve the state of Missouri and to be accessible to all corners of the state in everything that we do. And so the ways in which we reach out across the state and therefore nationally is not just in order to make sure people know who we are or to recruit students, but it's part of our constitutionally driven mission of the university. And one of the ways in which we do that, we have several ways. We have extension, we have various research initiatives, and then on the fun side, we have athletics. And so a couple of years ago, the athletic program at the University of Missouri and the university itself realigned into a different athletic conference, which puts us in association with different competitors on the field and also close association with different universities who are now our conference partners in the Southeastern Conference of the U.S. And in the process of doing that, a lot of self-awareness comes to light when you move to a different neighborhood, so to speak. Who are we relative to these new partners? How do we look and feel relative to these new partners? And so it wasn't that there was a moment where we realized that how we looked was stale or didn't tell our story, but we had almost a flare moment in our history where we all took a collective deep breath and thought about who are we? And so we decided as the College of Business to use that moment where there was a lot of external attention on the university for a variety of reasons and a lot of conversation about higher ed regardless of athletics to say, okay, this is the time for us. So I was a relatively new dean at the time, and we decided that it's time for a new website, it's time to tell the story, it's time to move into the new neighborhood and redecorate the house, so to speak, so that as we are identified in a new way, we can tell the story in a new way as well. So that's what really prompted the rebranding, the timing of the rebranding, why we engaged in the investigation. There can be different circumstances. I think that's a very particular story to us. But the challenges and the image factors that we discussed earlier, I think, are pretty consistent for all of us, whether there's a specific moment in time like what happened at the University of Missouri or not. But in the process of rebranding, in my opinion, if you do it right, you do a lot of research into who you are, not just to yourselves inside your four walls, but who you are to all of your constituencies, and not just the ones who love you. So, of course, you talk to your alums who treasure the relationship and appreciate the relationship, but you also talk to people across campus, you talk to the community that you serve, you talk to your competitors, and you ask them how they see you. And then you think about where that alignment is between who you want to be, how you see yourself, and how you are seen, and that's where the brand promise emerges. So in the state of Missouri, in all 50 states of the United States, there is a state mantra, and in the state of Missouri, it's the show me state. And what that means to us, and this is really core to our culture, is that we believe that we have something to show and that you don't have to agree with us until we've proven it to you. And we feel very strongly about that as citizens of the state and also in our educational mission. So our brand promise of the MIZBIZ brand is we'll show you. And we'll show you better business education. We'll show you opportunities. We'll show you can take this degree and go from here to anywhere. We'll show you innovation. We'll show you whatever, actually, depending on what it is that we're working on at the time, which of our programs we're highlighting. It ties very directly into our culture, very directly into our mission as a land-grant university, and very directly into the comprehensiveness of what we offer. It gives us a lot of flexibility, which we need because of the broadness of our mission. So that's the brand promise and how we got there.
Simple, but smart, very smart.
Thank you.
You know, the other day we read an article that Melissa Korn wrote in the Wall Street Journal, and she was talking more about brand promises, taglines, than she was about brand, because they are slightly different.
They are.
And she was reporting on Columbia's new brand promise, which is probably as old as one could think, being at the very center of business.
They
and
are. Mm-hmm.
and your tie, the show me state, will show you, is very clear. The MIZBIZ is very clear, and I think that's an important distinctiveness. Some others I've read are a little, they're interesting, I think good. I was interested in what UCLA was using, thinking in the next. The Darden's was simply ready, and Rochester was toughen up.
That's right.
When I look at all of these, I think they are interesting, but I think almost the promise needs some time to germinate to see if it really takes. When you tie yourself to the origin of the state's mantra to the world, show me, I think you've crossed a really tough bridge very quickly, and you've gotten into people's heads. That's what we're trying to do. So that's excellent.
Thank you.
Well, let's see what else we've got. How does a school begin the rebranding process? So you gave us a great kickoff. I think that timing was wonderful, but what are the first steps you suggest to others that maybe won't have that kickoff, and what players should be involved? Students, faculty, consultants, everybody. How do you go about doing that, and what would be the first steps, especially if you didn't have the momentum of the conference change?
Well, we did have the good fortune of a very specific moment in time that we were able to leverage and harness, depending on your point of view. So, but I don't think you have to have that at all. I mean, private industry and consumer products rebrand on a regular basis without any particular moment in time like that. What we did is we hired a consultant, and the consultant was someone who had worked with the university before, and so we were able to shortcut some of the learning about the University of Missouri that you would want the consultant that you work with to have. But I would say some universities have in-house consultants for this sort of thing. We don't, and so we hired somebody to work with us. And that consultant is an expert on the rebranding process and gave us a timeline within which to work that had flexibility, so that if we became delayed with something related to the mission, when we were launching a new student program, when we had some very interesting things happening with the research mission, we were able to wiggle within the timeline. It's our timeline to work with, but a good consultant will keep you on task, and in a way that's sometimes difficult to do when you're policing yourself and trying to stick to your own deadlines. In terms of who you engage, I think it's very important to understand who might have a reason or a way to inform your story, so that you can make sure that your brand promise is a promise that you can keep. That's the entire point of doing something like this. And so there are the obvious constituencies that anyone in higher ed would reach out to: your alums, the people who hire your students, the faculty. But I would also encourage you to reach out across your campus to the other colleges or institutions on campus. So in our case, because of our timing, not only did I ask all the other campus leaders to participate in this process in different ways and with different time commitments, but we worked very closely with athletics in a way that we never had before. They do a lot of branding. They know what they're doing. And we wanted to make sure, one, that the brands had enough simpatico that they made sense together, that they were cousins in the family, without in any way robbing the identity of either aspect of what we do, but also to leverage their experience and make sure that we took full advantage of all the resources we had available, especially the free ones. Those are good to take advantage of. We asked leaders at other colleges of business to participate in some of the focus groups. We asked employers who don't necessarily have alums of ours in leadership positions, but do hire our students, so they have some connection, to participate in the focus groups. And we heard our story from a variety of points of view as a result, and we learned a lot about ourselves, almost like you learn about yourself when you see a picture of yourself that you weren't expecting to see. It's you, and you recognize yourself, but you see yourself from a different point of view, and it helps. It helps you understand who you are. It helps you understand how well you're doing telling your story and where you can get better. And so for us, the timeline started with the conference realignment, but the process started with identifying a consultant and then letting them do their job.
So in all that process, what did you find was an interesting challenge that you might have not expected in this process?
Well, there were some obvious challenges, I should say. It's not free, so you need to identify resources to make something like this happen. It takes time. You have to be willing to pull those are sort of, I think, the predictable challenges. One of the predictable challenges that we probably should come back to is it also can be disconcerting to your colleagues across campus for your brand to go in a new direction, even if it stays within the family. That has challenges in terms of the overall branding that the university may be engaging in for those of us that sit within a larger university. But some of the interesting challenges were also that the feedback we received wasn't what we were expecting. So there wasn't anything that shook us to the core. I can't believe people see us that way. But at the same time, some of the consistent themes on who we weren't how we saw ourselves. And we had to make the decision on whether to embrace what was already out there, if you will, and then leverage it, or whether we wanted to try to redirect what people saw us as and make a brand promise that then had a gap between where we were and where we wanted to be and push our constituencies in that direction. And we ended up in the middle, but that was an unexpected challenge. I think we sometimes have some hubris that we know what we're doing and we feel a lot of pride in what we're doing, and we assume that what we're doing is what people see us as doing, and we learned that that is not always the case, and that when you're branding, that's challenging to bridge those two disparate points of view.
You know, AACSB is looking for a new CEO. It's time to rebrand. One of the things that a selection committee faces, and I think it's similar to a rebranding group, is that you have all of these good things that you'd like to have, but they're not resident in any one brand or person. The process of reconciling what's clearly important is interesting to me. Mm-hmm. How did you do it? And you had a lot of collaboration, but how did you reconcile what's priority first, or what are the must-dos that we have to accomplish in this?
Well, what we had to do in order to do that, because not only is it difficult to reconcile, but because we're comprehensive and unlike some of our peers, don't have one specific program that we're known for. Rather, it is the comprehensiveness that we're known for. We had a challenge of how we could capture all of that. So we presented that to our consultant as in all honesty, the most anxiety-inducing aspect of what we were trying to do. How could we possibly not only tell the story, but also keep everybody happy? Yeah. And they came back to us after doing the research with the We'll Show You. And so we have the ability to add to what we'll show you whatever we want, depending on what it is we're promoting or what it is we're doing or what chapter in the story we're trying to tell. And then also on a visual level, the way that we use the MIZBIZ brand mark is there is MIZBIZ in a vertical with a flag across the middle. And the default of the way we use that flag is with the Trulaske name. And a big part of this was to make sure we were connecting the transformational nature of the Trulaske gift to what we were doing, and the Trulaske family story, which is very closely aligned with the We'll Show You brand promise, an entrepreneurial story, and really pushing the boundaries and launching an entirely new enterprise in a way that was transformative for that industry and now is transformative for us. So that's our default, but we can put whatever language or information we want in that flag. So we can have MIZBIZ accounting, MIZBIZ entrepreneurship, MIZBIZ We'll Show You, and use that flag space visually to tell the brand story or make the brand promise clear, depending on whether we're just trying to tell the broad story of the college or a specific story. And we told our consultants that's what we needed, and they're experts, and they gave it back to us based on what the research showed, the way in which the story needed to be heard. And so that's why I really very strongly recommend that you find experts, whether you have them in-house or you bring in third parties. This is very difficult to do on your own because it's hard to be objective about how to tell your own story in this way.
Well, it sounds simple in the end, but it was very clever. You wonder if the rebranding process you'll convey something that's too narrow, and maintaining that comprehensive effectiveness of the brand is important. I can see MIZBIZ will show you research. You know, there's some things that are maybe harder to market, that clarity that you've enabled by staying in more of an umbrella type concept where you can fit to different pieces of what you're trying to get. So I think it's a good concept, and I do think these concepts, they work well for a state land grant institution with a big name, but I think it also works at smaller private schools and internationally.
Absolutely.
The concepts work.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I agree.
Well, there are so many areas of focus that play an important role in the brand of the school: the logo, the website, the university's image and orientation, the mission. Well, can't forget the mascot. Go Tigers.
That's
and
right.
so on. Are there any areas that should carry more weight than others? Must all areas be addressed when working to enhance a school's brand? And finally, which areas did Trulaske think were most important?
Well, for us, we thought we needed to do it all because we're a very large university and a very large college of business, and we have a very broad constituency, and we have a very specific state of Missouri story, but we have a national and international story too. And so in steps, we eventually have been conquering each of the pieces that you described. So website, e-communication, the collateral pieces that we distribute, e-newsletters, the marketing at conferences, marketing for our faculty in their academic work, making sure our employers know the story. So we have been, in a very purposeful way, pushing the story and the brand mark and the promise to everyone using every means we know available to us, but not all at once. And so how you prioritize, I think, depends on how you differentiate and who your constituencies are, because while I absolutely agree that the lessons of what we've experienced would apply to smaller schools, private schools, standalone schools, not everyone services the same constituencies. And so you can use the tools as they make sense for you. And I also think some of it's resources. Some of the pieces are much more expensive than others. So a new website is much harder than a Twitter campaign, and much more expensive, and it takes longer, and you need different experts. And we can use our fabulous students for Twitter campaigns, so we need to hire somebody to redo our website. And so the Twitter campaign was first. It was easier, it was quick, and it allowed us to create some momentum and traction that we then have been filling in with the pieces that require more time, more resources, more investment, more relationship on a deeper level with what we're doing.
In a lot of ways, social media has really helped level the playing field of communications, especially with this generation.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. What have been some of the resulting impacts of the Trulaske, from rebranding? For instance, have there been only changes to the curriculum or program offerings at Trulaske? What might be some of the other changes?
Well, we had the obvious positive impacts that you would expect. We've had more click-throughs on the website. We have much more followers and traffic on social media. We had opportunities like this, which is so wonderful to be able to tell the story. We feel a lot of pride in the faculty when they are presenting their research, and we're able to tell this in association with our underlying mission as they engage in various academic outreach. But then we've had these really positive, unexpected impacts that have been just wonderful. So we have very engaged alum base, and our alumni are, bar none, just the most fantastic group of people to work with, and we feel very engaged with them. But what you realize when you do something like this is that there are other alums that you may not be seeing or hearing from, or they may not be telling you this or helping you with this. And so our ability to do alumni engagement and our ability to engage with constituencies who we don't necessarily speak with regularly. So some of our government representation has been able to help us with this. My colleagues across campus who knew what we did, but didn't know that they could help us do it better. That's been wonderful. And then the feedback that we've received from all of these groups, the obvious groups and the not so obvious groups, has really helped us understand who we are. So at the same time, as a process of continuous improvement in our accreditation, of course, we review curriculum and we review aspects of the curriculum that deal with the professional preparation of the students, but also the scholarly preparation of the students. And what we heard about who we were and what we do well and what we should emphasize has informed that process. So on the undergraduate level, we have a very high commitment to the professional development of our students. We have a professional development program that has been covered in BizEd that is something every one of our almost 5,000 students has to participate in. And we really think we understand what it takes to professionally prepare a student, in addition to giving them the skills and competencies that a business education should provide. But we learned a lot more about what parts we're doing really well, what parts our constituencies think they need for the future, and now we're adding those. And we might have eventually, the market would have taught us those things anyway in the process of job interviews and hearing from recruiters and surveys, but we learned it quickly in a very direct way to the benefit of the students. And then when you launch a new brand, think of the learning opportunities. Our marketing faculty are doing some of the research. They helped us with some of the survey design. We have consulting teams helping us figure out, student consulting teams helping us figure out where to put the brand. We have marketing classes helping us analyze the results of the effort. So we are our own client, in a manner of speaking, that has allowed us to create real-time learning opportunities that benefit the students in real time, benefit us in real time. It's been wonderful, and we didn't know any of that would happen. So there is an investment. We started our conversation by talking about return on investment, and the look and feel of the school has improved. There's no doubt about it, but we've also had all these other returns, yields that we had no idea would happen that have been immensely positive.
Well, that's interesting. AACSB likes to look at itself as being the Intel inside. We borrow our slogans. But what role does or can AACSB accreditation play in elevating the visibility and competitiveness of a school's brand and image?
Well, we're very proud members of the AACSB, and what we think in the way that we've retold our story and are now telling our story and making our promise is that what goes into being accredited is part of what we'll show you. So when you look at the quality of your programs, the investment in research, the expansion of the knowledge base, the way in which the faculty work with the students, and that you are continuously improving what you do and working on the innovation of what you do, regardless of the audience that you are doing it with, this is inherent in being an accredited school, of having a globally recognized seal of approval, if you will, on the work that you're doing, research, teaching, outreach, and it helps us tell our story. So if we say we'll show you a better business education, we mean that our external constituencies, our peers, agree that this is what we're doing, and our accreditation is our way of affirming and receiving feedback from another one of our constituencies that what we're doing is, in fact, the best that it can be.
Well, now we're going to look up at the sky. Our member schools comprise a very diverse population, ranging from very large public research-oriented institutions to small private schools, and they're located in 85 countries around the world, accredited schools in 45 or so. How can schools better leverage their unique characteristics, such as size, location, context, to accomplish their goals, and I'd say market knowledge?
Well, I think that differentiation on top of a consistent core is what we've learned about ourselves going through this process, and that's how I would answer that question. I think there are certain inherent things that a business school, regardless of location, should be offering its students, offering the faculty, engaging in its research, engaging in the economic development of the community that it serves. This is our value proposition as colleges of business, and that's the foundation, if you will, and it's the broad base. But as you go up the pyramid, you look at your differentiation, and differentiation can come from a variety of factors. It can come from what Columbia used in Melissa's article in terms of their location, and of course the quality of what they do. UCLA's brand talks specifically about innovation. A lot of business schools, a lot of universities are engaging in innovation. They think their differentiation is in how they're doing it, and that's the story that they're telling. And so it's very important to understand what your differentiation is. Is it locational? Are you small, private, and therefore hands-on? Are you located physically in a place that allows you to do things that other locations simply can't leverage? Are you comprehensive, like we are, so that you can offer a very broad base that allows students to engage in whatever it is they hope to pursue and leverage from their education? And understanding what differentiates you is what part of the research in rebranding allows you to do. It helps your faculty present their research, it helps you develop your programs, and it helps you tell your story. But what I would say, and this relates back to our earlier conversation, is don't assume that you know what differentiates you or that you know everything that differentiates you. Allow yourself to be researched and allow external input to come in so that you take advantage of everything that differentiates you in telling that story and making that promise.
Here's a direction that I find very interesting and a little different. Business school collaboration is an area of considerable interest among our members, and it's become more common that schools will work together in programs, course delivery, and beyond domestic type of collaborations. In an environment where collaboration is encouraged, how can schools still maintain their individual competitive edge, and how do collaborations influence the primary brand?
That's a very difficult.
It's a tough one.
That's tough, and it can be environmental, meaning it can depend very much on the culture of the university in which the College of Business finds its home. And I can only speak to the University of Missouri. We are, as per the land-grant mission that I described earlier, very comprehensive and very collaborative. And it is cultural for us to do a lot of sharing of content, of research, of outreach, of resources. That doesn't mean we always agree, and that doesn't mean we don't occasionally compete within the family. We've been very lucky in how we've managed that, and we really think that even from the occasional disagreement, we are all better for it. It is the nature of business for multiple disciplinary areas to come together, and when you look at how innovation happens and how wealth is derived, it's from multiple inputs consistently. And so I think it behooves us to understand what business is as we study it, as we teach it, as we produce it, as the case may be, and then do our work accordingly, that we end up better off if we mirror the way in which business occurs. But that doesn't mean that it's not occasionally a challenge to your student recruitment, to your resource allocation, to the job opportunities for your students upon graduation, to the teaching or research interests of your faculty at the margins. Those can gray, and that can be difficult. And so I think the main thing that we've done, and one of the things that the research phase of the rebranding allowed us to do, was understand where people see us relative to our collaborators and or our competitors, because sometimes they're both. And so we got a pretty clear insight into what it was that our various constituencies think we bring to the table. And we think, of course, that we bring more to the table than the external world views us as. I think that's pretty natural, that you know your story more deeply than your external constituencies do. But it allows us to be able to explain why we think we need to take lead on this and maybe are more willing to cede on that, or where we have weakness, that if you could help us with this, we would both be better off. We're more informed on that story now. But that is one of the hardest things about how things are changing in higher ed in general. It's not just that your colleagues in another college across campus are teaching classes that seem a lot like business school courses. It's that there are free online courses teaching your exact content that we have to decide what to do. And so your differentiation, your value proposition, and understanding it is something we all need to do, regardless of whether it's for the purpose of rebranding or simply for the purpose of making sure that what you're doing is the best that it can possibly be.
Well, with the purpose of collaborations, it really needs to be a synergistic impact on the schools involved. And it's a very important focus of our international conference and annual meeting in Singapore come April. So I hope that others will take part in that. I think it's going to be a real next step in understanding how enduring collaborations work and provide mutual benefit to schools in different environmental models, economic models.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, with public funding for education decreasing in most countries, not all, but most, schools are being forced to raise tuition, motivating the already mobile student population to consider less expensive alternatives elsewhere, or even virtually. How can business schools differentiate themselves and communicate their value to potential students in an environment with new players who oftentimes offer cheaper options?
This is also very tough. The market is changing very quickly, faster than we are accustomed to, I think, in higher education in general and in colleges of business. But I think that the value proposition of a business education will vary depending on the different circumstances that we were describing: location, size, focus in specific disciplinary areas, expertise, physical connection. But there are certain differentiations of higher education that I think are consistent in our story that we really need to commit to telling. The sorts of things you gain from your advanced studies, the network that you build, the fact that you become part of an alumni base, the safe opportunity to try things and potentially fail and learn those lessons and move forward, the opportunity to engage with faculty and develop relationships and leverage the breadth of experience that their research interest, teaching interest, and the alums that they know and have worked with allow for a student in their class. Peer-to-peer learning is so valuable and important that we offer that I don't know that we talk about as much as perhaps we should. The basket of things that you gain by connecting to a school, learning from them, and then taking that learning into the marketplace are value added without question. And then understanding what of that broad story is yours, your differentiator, is something that we really need to think about and embrace and tell, because we're being challenged. Now, some challenges are good. Challenges in competition, they make you improve. We've all leveraged new technologies that we weren't even talking about a few years ago. We're able to put our products, teaching and the impact of our research out to audiences we couldn't have reached a few years ago. The hope is that eventually those technologies will drive costs down the way that technologies often do. We haven't seen that yet, but the hope is that it would come. Those are good things, and they wouldn't happen without this competitive challenge. But at the same time, there was, we were talking about Melissa's article earlier. Clayton Christensen had an article in the New York Times last week comparing higher ed to sail transport and steamboat transport, and are we on the sailing ships and the steamboats are passing us by? I don't think so, but I think we should be able to explain why not. And we should understand how to take advantage of the competitive challenges and then understand what differentiates you and improve and emphasize those things. But it's hard to do in the midst of the challenge. And so we had a really unique opportunity in the timing of this rebranding exercise where we really got a nice, clean insight into what we now understand are our differentiators, at least for the time being, for the foreseeable future, and making sure that that's part of our story. But at the same time, in the back room, in the part that maybe even our external constituencies aren't seeing yet, we're making sure we understand this technology, where we can use it, who our competitors are, how we manage that. And we don't want to be a sailing ship unless it's just for pleasure. We want to be a steamboat and more, whatever the next iteration is, and stay current as well. So it requires an investment. You have to look up from what you're doing and look around to understand what differentiates you. But we have to, in order to do what we're supposed to do and have always been supposed to do for our students, for the research that we do, for the communities that we serve.
So I think you just told very well the UCLA Anderson slogan with Thinking the Next. Very good, very important point. I also think that technology is a wonderful tool, but it's not the holy grail. It's not the be-all, end-all. You have to know its limitations, its capacities, effectiveness, and then watch its development closely, because it surprises every few years.
It's true.
Reaching out to policymakers and government is becoming more important for communicating the relevancy of business schools and securing funding and support for school initiatives and activities. How can business schools make a greater impact in their messaging to government and lawmakers regarding the strategic importance offered to these groups by business schools?
That's a really good question. We're a public university and, of course, a public college of business, so we do this even more than some of our counterparts, private counterparts, or some of our international colleagues do. But the story is critically important. What I think sometimes could be a bigger part of the story is how the study of business positively improves economic development. And there are a couple of different ways in which that happens. One is that a lot of our students start businesses and are entrepreneurial and come to study business in order to learn how to be more entrepreneurial. And there are some notable examples of wildly successful entrepreneurs that either didn't finish university or didn't study business at all, and that's fantastic, but the vast majority of entrepreneurial activity comes through or in connection to the study of business. And those people start businesses and employ others and pay taxes and contribute to the economic well-being of the state in a way that shouldn't just be assumed, that can be enhanced and improved with an investment in business. I also think that we spend a lot of time thinking about how we want innovation to occur, and there's an assumption that innovation happens in the scientific side of our higher education enterprise, and of course it does. But there's a difference between innovation and invention that our entrepreneurial colleagues who are much more schooled in this area can describe better than I can. But in terms of explaining it to our legislators, our funding agencies, our sources of support from our states and governments, that invention occurs in a context, bringing it to market and commercializing it and making it innovative and having it then drive economic development is a business model that we teach, usually in collaboration with our colleagues across campus, especially in collaboration with our colleagues across campus. And so making sure that your business school can be a partner to that enterprise benefits everyone. It benefits the students doing the research, certainly benefits the faculty scholars, which are such a huge aspect of what we do. It benefits the state as those are successful. It benefits the campus because if innovation on campus is successful, that's a revenue opportunity, in many cases transformative revenue opportunity, and we all know examples of that, Gatorade at the University of Florida probably being the classic example of that, but there are many more. And so the more that we understand how the study of business helps economic development and therefore the state, I think the better we are at explaining why support of what we do is a valuable thing for the state and the government to invest in.
Well, innovation is certainly a product of team diversity, and if you look very carefully in AACSB standards, diversity is a very important element. Some individuals and alumni in particular can be very protective and hesitant to accept changes to aspects of their school's particular brand, even down to changes to a school's logo. I'm really thinking in my mind what happened recently in Thunderbird with the friendly merger with Laureate. I think it was friendly, I don't know. What suggestions can you offer about communicating brand changes which would most effectively placate the fears of those who may be concerned about the direction the brand is being taken?
Well, that's a different kind of challenge than some of the challenges we talked about, but a challenge nonetheless, because nothing could be more frustrating than doing all this work that I've been advocating for and then it just being stopped by a constituency that says, sorry, you can't do that, you can't change that, you can't promote that. That would be very unfortunate outcome. So what we did is we included the people on campus who are responsible for the entire university's campus in the process. They were part of our focus groups, they worked directly with the consultants, and we made sure that they were okay with us engaging in this exploration from the get-go. And they've been wonderful partners. Now, with that said, that doesn't mean that once we had the MIZBIZ brand mark and we had the We'll Show You promise, that we didn't have to then figure out where to put it, where we could use it, because the University of Missouri trademarked logo, the color scheme is all very closely protected. And we are a part of that family and want to be. We want to tell our story in the context of the University of Missouri, of which we are very proud to be a small part. And so but the MIZBIZ brand mark looks very different from the University of Missouri trademark. And actually that's how we solved it. So that was our specific method. And I think the key is figuring out what method will be acceptable and make sense. There's no confusing what we're doing with the Trulaske College of Business and what the University of Missouri is doing. And so as a result, we can put the two side by side, and you'll see it that way on the website, on our business cards, on letterhead, on other print collateral, so that it's very clear that we are the Trulaske College of Business. We make the We'll Show You promise at the University of Missouri, which is itself an incredible institution, broad institution of higher learning, of which we are a part. And that can be handled visually. That's what branding does, is help tell your story in a visual way, creates a three-dimensional impression, but ultimately it's visual. And so we worked with them from the start. I think depending on the culture in which you're operating, and they will vary, the key is understanding who needs to be a participant, how to create buy-in, and what is your end goal. If your end goal is to completely spin off from the story of your greater university, that's harder. So we made sure that it was collaborative from the start.
Yeah, that is a tough one. I think of another example where we think of Wharton and the University of Pennsylvania and the strength of the Wharton brand in management education. It's the first modern business school from the 1880s.
Absolutely.
So I think that's an interesting question. Do you brand the business school really clearly from the mother school, or do you try to build on it? And in Missouri's case, it does no benefit to differentiate too greatly from the umbrella brand.
I agree.
Well, that completes the AACSB manufactured questions, which I thought they're very good. But now we hear from the audience. This is what the audience really wants to know. And so I'll present the first question. How can branding help bring a school out of the unattractive position, the middle, one of the worst places for an organization to be in the competitive landscape, according to Michael Porter?
Well, Michael Porter would say you differentiate. I think Michael Porter and his generic strategies, theories, and literature would tie directly into what we've been talking about, that you have to understand who you are and what your distinct opportunities that you offer are, and then tell them cleanly so that it's palatable, that a variety of constituencies can hear it. But I think that something we all have to keep in mind is a brand promise can't do more than what you're doing. We have to be continuously improving. We have to make sure, as the leadership and stewards of business education, that what we're doing is of the highest quality, is innovative, moves forward, and then the brand promise tells that story. So if you are challenged by the concern of being in the middle because you feel like your look and feel is dated, that's one type of remedy. If you're challenged by a sense that you're in the middle because you are in the middle, then there's a deeper dive that needs to happen in the quality of the programs that you're doing, in the support that you give your faculty for their research, et cetera, so that when you tell that brand story, the differentiation emerges from the promise that you make.
How does a school pick the brand it wishes to push when a school has a mixture of competing possibilities, when in fact having so many may be the problem in the first place?
Well, that's us. I mean, we asked ourselves that question. We are comprehensive, and so there are a couple of ways to think about that. In the process of doing the research, you need to understand what those different interests are. They should be the sort of thing that after you really reflect, you can list out. And in some cases, in our case, it's pretty horizontal when we make our list of the different things that we want to be able to show you. In some cases, you may do many things, but they may be hierarchical, and that would drive a different brand promise. So we worked with a consultant, with an expert, to make sure that our the visual of the brand and the promise that it makes built in a comprehensive flexibility, because that's who we are. So I understand that question deeply. But for schools that are emphasizing a specific differentiating factor, and you gave some very good examples, then you identify accordingly. And I can't say enough, the research process, you should not shortcut through that process, because there are probably things on that list that you aren't even reflecting or that may be higher to your external constituencies than you realize, and to embrace them or manage them, as the case may be, is the easiest way to do that is in how you tell your brand story.
How might you manage any ensuing backlash for a change made in a school's brand? It sounds like you really did your homework to make sure that didn't happen, but let's say something was missing. What would be an idea that you might recommend to a school that missed a constituency?
Well, actually, before I talk about a missing constituency, we did have a little backlash, and I'll tell that story. So the University of Missouri's nickname is Mizzou, for those of us who don't know us, and we are very proud of that. It's a very positive nickname for us, and we have we started the conversation talking about the athletic conference realignment, but our cheer, and I can be wearing a Mizzou shirt in any corner of the world, and someone will yell to me across an airport or a hotel lobby, MIZ, and the response is ZOU. It's like a secret handshake for our 200,000 some odd alums scattered throughout the world. So for us, MIZ, ZOU, Mizzou is a very proud part of the University of Missouri, and then of course the Trulaske College of Business is part of the University of Missouri. And the way we embrace that is with MIZBIZ, or some of our internal constituencies or alums will say MIZBIZ as a reflection of the MIZ-ZOU cheer that we make and say to each other to signal our affinity. So, and we thought that was incredibly clever to leverage that as part of the brand. But some of our constituencies, a segment of our constituencies, felt very strongly that every message that comes out of the University of Missouri should say University of Missouri. And so we had a backlash from MIZBIZ or MIZBIZ that we did not anticipate. And so what we did for those who expressed concern about that, because once someone says it to you, you realize, oh gosh, this is what happens when you engage in this kind of process is you come, no matter how many people you involve and how many focus groups you do, there will always be someone who says either, why didn't you think of that? Why aren't you saying X? Or I can't believe you're saying Y, when it should be Z in any case. And so it's all communication. There are a couple of things. You can't please everybody. That is impossible. And so you have to figure out what you want to accomplish with the brand and accept that not everybody will be pleased, first of all. And second of all, sometimes the backlash is correct. In our case, I think what we chose to emphasize made sense for the story that we are telling and what we're doing well right now. But we also needed to explain to the constituency that wants the story to be the University of Missouri only, and not the University of Missouri, Mizzou, Trulaske, or any of the other ways in which we're known, why we did it this way. So we were able to point to the research, we were able to point to the feedback from the focus groups, we were able to point to where web traffic from certain constituencies come in, social media engagement from certain constituencies comes in, and explain that that's what we were doing. But what we also did, based on that feedback after the fact, is realign visually where we put the two marks. So we have the University of Missouri trademark, which is on everything that we do, and MIZBIZ with Trulaske, or we'll show you, or with its accounting, it says accounting, et cetera, as we were describing, and we make sure that they're visually, that it's clear where we sit within the bigger picture.
Good solution.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we've got time for one more question from the audience. What role do alumni play in global brand recognition of a business school? How should schools better nurture these relationships?
Well, for us, the alums, the alumni base, they are a very, very important constituency to us. I can't state that enough. They make everything happen for us. They support the research mission. They help us understand what we're teaching. They hire our students. They are our ambassadors. So I think if you think about the different things you hope for from your alums, you hope for them to be successful. You hope for them to support what you're doing with their time, talent, treasure, insight. You hope for them to advise you. You hope for them to advocate for you. But you should make it easy for them to do that, right? You should make it clear to them where their pride comes from, make it clear how the story is evolving since their graduation, how you're making sure that the education that they invested in returns and continues to return more and more and better. And so to engage them in the story through various communication, we do all the things that schools like us do with newsletters and mailings and speakers and web interaction and social media, news announcements that we share with our colleagues as well. But a brand lets them tell that story quickly and easily. So we really believe in the corporate identity that when one of our alums, like I was describing earlier, is in an airport and their shirt says MIZBIZ, Trulaske College of Business, and someone yells MIZ across the room to them, that they feel pride and understand what they're saying. And so it enhances all the things you hope for from your alums, especially how they are an ambassador for you going forward.
Well, Joan, thank you for a wonderful course on rebranding and a wonderful story. I think it was excellent, and we all enjoyed this tremendously. Now, you've been such a good guest, and you are from our home state.
Yes.
I must warn you that right there is Director Seri. She is a UCF Golden Knight, and they've historically been friendly, although my Houston Cougars might not say so this weekend. I have a degree from Houston, too. But outside that door are gators. They're all over the place. So beware as you leave.
Yes, and as a former member of the faculty at Florida State University, I say those waters can be very treacherous.
They're treacherous. The good news is we have Seminoles here that will usher you out the door and take care of you.
And we all are glad to swim together.
Great topic. I wanted to say one thing about a brand this year that I think did just a wonderful and poignant thing, and that's the advent of the brand Boston Strong, which emanated from the Patriots Day Marathon catastrophe in Boston, but manifested itself as a motivational slogan all the way through the 2013 World Series, which were won by my Boston Red Sox. So congratulations to Red Sox Nation, to my friend Jan and Joe, maybe the Braves next year or the Phillies, but I think it'll be the Cardinals.
It could be the Cardinals, too.
I think it will be. But thank you all for listening to us, viewing this segment. We thank our global audience, and we appreciate your tolerance of some of our Americanisms. I think many schools will be encouraged to assess their current branding and marketing strategies and look for opportunities for innovation and greater impact. Now, please join us again in February for our next broadcast, the VNL. Visit our website to look at some of the old ones. We've got quite a library now. And I will say that this coming February, one of the areas that we're going to try and emphasize to a great extent is collaborations. It's an important theme this year for AACSB. It's the driver of our international conference and annual meeting. And we really believe that collaborations between the developed and the emerging countries of the world are a strategy for mutual benefit. So thank you all. Good day. Until next time.